You trust an engine with your life, your time, and your money. But some motors give nothing back. They leak, rattle, overheat, and leave riders stranded. These are the 12 worst motorcycle engines ever made. Stick around for number 1. It nearly destroyed its own manufacturer. Number 12. Yamaha Virago 750V Twin. At first glance, the Virago looked like a solid choice. It had the lines of a classic cruiser, the right amount of chrome, and a reputation for being beginner-friendly. The engine was a 749 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin, modestly tuned to deliver around 55 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. For casual riding, that seemed like enough. But beneath the styling, things fell apart quickly. The starter system became one of the most notorious failures in the motorcycle world. Weak engagement, grinding noises, and outright refusal to turn over became routine. The bike didn't just have trouble starting, it made riders question whether it would start at all. Braking came from a single disc in the front and a drum in the rear, which felt outdated even when it was new. Suspension was basic, using telescopic forks and dual shocks, offering minimal damping over rough roads. And while the wet weight was a manageable 515 pounds, the ergonomics made it feel heavier. The seat height of 28.2 inches placed the rider low, but the awkward reach to the controls made long rides uncomfortable. Heat was another issue. The rear cylinder received limited airflow, and in summer conditions, it cooked the rider's leg. Combine that with the engine's tendency to vibrate at higher revs, and you had a bike that wore out both its rider and its own components. Priced around $4,500 when new, the Virago seemed like a deal. And for some it was, until the repair bills started stacking up. The combination of weak electronics, clunky shifting, and constant starter failures turned ownership into a chore. It had the looks, but not the longevity. For every rider who praised its charm, there were 3 more who pushed it into a garage and left it there. The next bike on this list proves that iconic style is worthless if your engine can't keep its fluids where they belong. Number 11. Harley-Davidson Shovelhead. The Shovelhead was supposed to be an upgrade, an evolution from the Panhead that brought more power and refinement to the road. In reality, it was one of the most frustrating engines ever bolted into a frame. Initial displacement came in at 1,214 cubic centimeters, eventually growing to 1,340. It produced around 65 horsepower and delivered a respectable 75 pound-feet of torque, which made for solid low-end grunt. But that torque came with a price: heat, vibration, and a river of leaking oil. This engine ran hot in every condition. Whether sitting at a red light or climbing a long highway grade, heat built up fast. Cylinder heads struggled to shed it, and oil would seep from the gaskets like clockwork. Many owners got used to wiping their engine cases down after every ride. Braking improved slightly over time, with disc brakes replacing drums, but suspension remained old school, standard telescopic forks up front and twin shocks out back. The bike's wet weight came in around 650 pounds, and with a seat height just under 26 inches, it was manageable for most riders. What wasn't manageable was the wrenching. This engine earned its reputation during the AMF years when Harley-Davidson's quality control was at its worst. Assembly line tolerances were loose. Parts were inconsistent. Entire engines left the factory in need of immediate rework. The Shovelhead wasn't just a high-maintenance engine, it was a gamble. Some units ran strong for years, while others never made it through their first season without issues. And the engine mounts? Constantly loosening from vibration. Priced around $4,800 when new, it wasn't the cost that drove people away. It was the feeling that every ride came with a repair session waiting on the other side. The next engine tried to fix vibration with fancy balanced shafts and nearly destroyed itself in the process. If you've ever owned a bike that made you question your life choices, hit that like button. And let us know in the comments which engine deserves to be roasted next. Number 10. Yamaha TX 750 Omniphase Twin. This was supposed to be Yamaha's answer to the rising demand for smooth middleweight touring bikes. At its core, the TX 750 looked like a smart bet. A four-stroke parallel twin engine displacing 743 cubic centimeters and producing around 63 horsepower and 48 pound-feet of torque. But the real headline was its so-called omniphase balancer system designed to cancel out vibration using dual contra-rotating shafts. In theory, it was brilliant. In practice, it was a disaster. The balancer chain stretched under normal use, knocking the timing out of sync. Once that happened, the system stopped working as intended. Vibration came back worse than before, and engine reliability plummeted. The very feature meant to smooth out the ride became the source of its worst problems. The lubrication system didn't help either. The engine suffered from oil aeration, where air bubbles became trapped in the oil, starving the bearings and top end of lubrication. This led to excessive wear, overheating, and in some cases, catastrophic failure. Early production models were especially prone to this flaw, and many engines didn't make it past a few thousand miles without intervention. Braking was handled by a single disc in the front and a drum at the rear, which felt underpowered for its weight. The suspension system used conventional telescopic forks and twin shocks, adequate but not remarkable. Wet weight hovered around 570 pounds with a seat height of 31 inches. At launch, the starting price was just under $5,000. The TX750 was never meant to be flashy, but it was supposed to be dependable. Instead, it developed a reputation for being fragile, frustrating, and expensive to maintain. It didn't lack power, it lacked durability. Owners spent more time checking oil foaming issues than enjoying the ride. If you thought Yamaha went too far, just wait until you see what Honda did with a futuristic automatic cruiser. Looking to upgrade your gear? We've picked the essentials. Check out our curated list in the description. Number 9. Honda DN01. Some machines confuse more than they inspire. That was the case with the DN01, a motorcycle caught between cruiser comfort and scooter simplicity. Its engine, borrowed from Honda's Transalp, was a 680 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin, making around 61 horsepower and 45 pound-feet of torque. But what truly set the DN01 apart was its gearbox. Honda's so-called human-friendly transmission was a continuously variable hydraulic-mechanical hybrid system, essentially a complex automatic transmission with no manual option. The goal was to create seamless acceleration, removing the need for shifting. What riders got instead was a joyless, disconnected experience that felt more like operating a golf cart than piloting a motorcycle. Throttle response was soft and sluggish. Without gears or a clutch to engage, power delivery was flat and uninspired. The bike never surged, never pulled, never gave the visceral thrill that V-twin riders expect. Top speed was limited electronically to around 110 miles per hour, but the weight and transmission robbed the engine of any sense of urgency. Speaking of weight, wet curb mass came in at over 600 pounds. Combined with a low-slung seat height of 27.2 inches, the DN01 felt heavy, planted, and not in a good way. Suspension was basic. Telescopic forks in the front and a single rear shock, and the braking system used twin front discs with a single rear disc, enough to manage the bulk but lacking refinement. Heat buildup was a common complaint. The engine and bodywork trapped warmth near the rider's legs, especially in traffic. And with a starting price around $7,400, the bike offered little value for anyone beyond design novelty. It was not a bad engine by technical standards, but it was a mismatch. A smooth V-twin trapped in a platform no one asked for. From oddball engineering to outright overkill, let's move to the world's biggest V-twin, where torque becomes torture. Number 8. Kawasaki Vulcan 2000 V-twin. This engine was built to break records, and in some ways it did. The Vulcan 2000 housed a massive 2,053 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin engine that produced around 116 horsepower and a thunderous 141 pound-feet of torque. It was at the time the largest displacement V-twin ever put into a production motorcycle. On paper, that kind of torque should have translated into unmatched power. In the real world, it turned the Vulcan into a heavyweight bruiser that lacked finesse. Acceleration felt like brute force rather than speed. You got a strong launch in first gear, but after that, the torque flattened out, making the ride feel dull and top-heavy. Wet weight came in at a staggering 875 pounds. That heft, combined with a low seat height of 26.8 inches, made slow-speed maneuvering awkward and exhausting. The suspension setup included a standard telescopic fork and a preload adjustable rear shock, which helped with ride comfort but couldn't disguise the sheer mass of the machine. Braking was handled by dual front discs and a single rear disc, which performed adequately but had to work hard to stop the bulk. And in traffic, that big engine radiated heat like a furnace. Riders reported intense discomfort at stoplights and in city environments, where airflow was limited and leg burn became a real issue. Fuel economy was predictably poor, hovering around 37 miles per gallon. But fuel range wasn't the problem. Rideability was. The Vulcan 2000 prioritized size over balance, creating a motorcycle that demanded constant physical effort to control. Starting prices landed near $13,800, making it a premium machine that offered presence but little practicality. And speaking of oversized, what do you get when you shove a car engine into a motorcycle frame? Number 7. Amazonas 1600 V-Twin. Few motorcycles have confused riders quite like the Amazonas. Built in Brazil and powered by a Volkswagen Beetle engine, this bike wasn't just unconventional, it was unwieldy. The engine came straight from a VW Type 1, a 1,585 cubic centimeter air-cooled flat 4, repurposed to sit inside a motorcycle frame. That engine made around 54 horsepower and roughly 78 pound-feet of torque, fine for a compact car, but wildly underpowered for a motorcycle weighing over 850 pounds. Even paired with a 4-speed manual transmission adapted from a car, the bike struggled. Acceleration was slow, throttle response was lazy, and overtaking on the highway required more planning than most riders had patience for. Top speed hovered near 78 miles per hour, and even getting there felt like a chore. The bulk of the car engine made the bike nose-heavy, and the center of gravity sat low and awkwardly forward. Handling was clumsy in corners, and the weight distribution made tight turns uncomfortable and slow. The suspension was a standard telescopic front fork and twin rear shocks, but it couldn't mask the roughness of the ride. Braking came from discs borrowed from small cars, which faded quickly under pressure. Fuel economy sat near 31 miles per gallon. Not terrible, but not great considering the sluggish performance. One of the most persistent complaints was heat. The flat 4 ran hot, especially in traffic, and riders frequently reported leg burns and discomfort on warm days. The cooling fan ran constantly, but it rarely kept up with demand, especially in urban settings. Priced around $6,800 when new, the Amazonas offered something different. But different doesn't always mean better. Its design confused more than it impressed, and the riding experience was defined by compromise. Now let's talk about a brand that didn't go too big, but too experimental. Meet the rotary disaster no one could fix. Number 6. Suzuki RE5 Wankel Rotary. In the 1970s, rotary engines were being hailed as the future of motorcycling. Suzuki jumped headfirst into that vision with the RE5, a bike designed to showcase cutting-edge technology and leave piston engines behind. At its core was a 497 cubic centimeter single-rotor Wankel rotary engine. It produced approximately 32 horsepower and 38 pound-feet of torque, paired with a 5-speed manual transmission. On paper, it was meant to be smooth, compact, and vibration-free. In practice, it was complicated, temperamental, and constantly underwhelming. Riders were promised performance that could rival middleweight cruisers of the time, but the delivery was far from impressive. Throttle response was soft, acceleration was sluggish, and the power curve lacked the urgency most riders craved. To make matters worse, the engine ran hot, very hot. Despite being liquid-cooled, the RE5 struggled with heat management under load, especially during longer rides or stop-and-go traffic. Cooling system components were delicate and long-term reliability was questionable. The chassis was heavy for the class, with a wet weight nearing 570 pounds. Seat height was set at just under 30 inches, giving the rider a grounded feel, but maneuvering the bike never felt agile. Suspension came from a telescopic front fork and dual rear shocks, standard for the era, but nothing extraordinary. Braking was handled by a single disc up front and a drum in the rear, adequate but not exceptional. Fuel economy suffered as well, averaging just over 31 miles per gallon. Not bad on its own, but disappointing given the modest power output. The RE5 was priced around $6,500, expensive for a bike that required constant attention and offered limited payoff. For all its ambition, the RE5 proved that innovation without refinement can lead to failure. It wasn't a bad idea, it just wasn't a good motorcycle. Still, Suzuki wasn't alone. Another rotary engine hit the market and immediately hit a wall. Number 5. Hercules W2000 Rotary. The Wankel rotary engine promised a new era of compact, smooth-running motorcycles. Hercules was one of the first manufacturers to take that promise seriously, but their execution was anything but successful. At the center of the W2000 was a 294 cubic centimeter single-rotor rotary engine, air-cooled and minimal by design. Unfortunately, that minimalist approach worked against it. The engine produced just 27 horsepower and 25 pound-feet of torque, which even by 1970 standards was shockingly low. Power delivery was flat, with little torque off the line and no satisfying surge at higher revolutions. It lacked personality, excitement, and usable performance. Air cooling proved to be one of the engine's most serious weaknesses. Without a liquid cooling system, the rotor housing heated up quickly, especially at lower speeds or during warm weather rides. Riders frequently complained about discomfort, engine knock, and reduced longevity due to thermal stress. Handling was also an issue. With a dry weight of just over 480 pounds, the W2000 wasn't excessively heavy, but its wide dimensions and awkward weight distribution made it feel clumsy in turns. Seat height sat at just under 31 inches, and the suspension was standard. Telescopic forks in front and dual shocks at the rear. The braking setup, disc in front, drum in rear, was barely adequate for a bike that, despite low-speed capabilities, didn't inspire confidence in emergency stops. Fuel economy landed around 42 miles per gallon, which was respectable, but it did little to compensate for the lackluster performance. And then there was the price. With a starting figure just under $5,000, the W2000 asked riders to pay a premium for an engine that felt unfinished. Owners expected innovation. What they got was a mechanical oddity that quickly faded into obscurity. The W2000 wasn't just forgettable, it was a warning sign that not all ideas deserve the open road. If those were weak and weird, this next one is just sad, because it promised everything and delivered a fire hazard. Number 4. Norton P10 Parallel Twin. Norton had high hopes for the P10. It was designed to be a leap forward, an 800 cubic centimeter, double overhead cam parallel twin meant to replace the aging Atlas and reassert British dominance. But what it delivered instead was one of the most over-engineered and underperforming engines ever to wear the Norton name. On paper, the specs didn't seem terrible. Power output was around 58 horsepower, with modest torquey figures that failed to improve on the Atlas it was meant to surpass. The engine was mated to a 5-speed gearbox and mounted with an unusual rubber isolation system intended to reduce vibration. But that system became the engine's most fatal flaw. The rubber mounts flexed under load, especially during acceleration, allowing the sprockets to jump teeth on the chain. That led to poor reliability, erratic power delivery, and in extreme cases, mechanical failure. The engine vibrated so much that even when the mounts did their job, the result was a loose, disconnected feel that left riders uneasy. Oil leaks were constant, not minor seeps, but structural recurring leaks from the pushrod tubes, cam cases, and even crank seals. Top-ups became part of every ride. In colder climates, the leaks only got worse. And despite the complexity of its design, the engine delivered poor fuel economy. averaging just 35 miles per gallon. Braking was handled by a single disc in front and a drum in the rear. The suspension setup included basic telescopic forks and dual shocks, but the handling never matched the promise. Wet weight came in around 560 pounds and the seat height sat at 31 inches. Starting price hovered near $5,000, but few saw that as money well spent. The P10 was not just a bad engine, it was a cautionary tale. Norton engineers knew early on that it was too heavy, too complex, and too late to compete. By the time the flaws became undeniable, the damage was already done. Still watching? You're clearly not afraid of the ugly truth. Hit subscribe because the next engine we expose might be sitting in your garage. But even Norton didn't bankrupt themselves with one engine. That honor goes to the next entry. Number 3. Bimota V-Do 2-Stroke. Bimota built its reputation crafting exotic high-performance machines using engines from established manufacturers. But with the V-Do, they decided to go it alone, developing a 500 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled, fuel-injected 2-stroke twin of their own. It was a bold move that ended in complete disaster. The engine produced around 110 horsepower and 55 pound-feet of torque. In theory, this gave the bike the explosiveness of a race machine with the refinement of electronic fuel injection. But the reality was far less elegant. Riders reported constant bogging, surging throttle behavior, and inconsistent performance at all revs. The throttle would suddenly cut or spike, sometimes mid-turn, creating unpredictable handling and a genuine safety hazard. The direct fuel injection system was rushed and underdeveloped. Instead of revolutionizing 2-strokes, it made them unrideable. The chassis was lightweight and beautifully built, but it couldn't save the engine. Wet weight landed at just under 400 pounds, and the seat height was set at 32 inches. Perfect for aggressive riding. Suspension components were high-end, and braking was handled by dual discs up front with a single rear disc, delivering more stopping power than most riders ever got to use. Fuel economy was poor, landing below 25 miles per gallon. The bike also consumed oil aggressively and ran hot, making real-world riding impractical. Priced around $15,000, the V-Do was one of the most expensive production 2-strokes ever sold. Out of the first 170 units produced, nearly all were recalled. Many were retrofitted with carburetors just to make them run, effectively abandoning the very innovation that defined the project. The V-Do didn't just fail, it bankrupted the company and erased years of development in one brutal stroke. And now let's look at a V-twin that tried to copy Suzuki and ended up copying all the wrong things. Number 2. Hyosung GT650R V-Twin. At a glance, the GT650R looked like a budget alternative to bikes like the Suzuki SV650. It featured similar dimensions, a liquid-cooled V-twin layout, and a sporty full-fairing design. The engine displaced 647 cubic centimeters and was rated at approximately 75 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. But once riders put real miles on it, the cracks began to show. Quickly and repeatedly. Throttle response was wildly inconsistent. Some units surged under mild acceleration while others bogged down and hesitated. No matter how much owners tinkered with tuning or mapping, the engine never delivered power smoothly. The GT650R also ran hot, especially in traffic or during warmer months. The cooling fan often kicked in late, and once temperatures climbed, power delivery became even more erratic. Electrical issues added another layer of unreliability. Faulty sensors, fluctuating idle speeds, and weak connections plagued early models. The suspension consisted of standard telescopic forks in the front and a monoshock in the rear. Braking was handled by twin discs up front and a single disc at the back, adequate for the weight, which hovered around 485 pounds wet. The seat height was set at 31.5 inches. On paper, it all looked good. But Hyosung's inconsistent build quality turned a promising setup into a mechanical guessing game. Fuel economy was acceptable at around 40 miles per gallon, but owners often found themselves spending more on repairs than on fuel. Casing showed wear early. Hoses cracked. Some bikes developed ticking noises from the top end well before the break-in period was complete. Starting prices were under $6,000, but the true cost revealed itself in reliability. It was not a catastrophic failure, it was a slow, grinding one. A machine that promised excitement and delivered babysitting. You've seen failures of innovation, you've seen failures of scale, but nothing compares to our last one. Number 1. AJS Porcupine Parallel Twin. The Porcupine was a machine that arrived with promise and prestige. It won a world title. It carried the weight of British engineering pride, and it nearly destroyed the company that built it. At the heart of this troubled legend was a 4-stroke parallel twin engine displacing 498 cubic centimeters and producing around 48 horsepower with 38 pound-feet of torque. Originally designed to be supercharged, the Porcupine had to be reworked when supercharging was banned in 1946. What remained was a complex, compromised power plant that never quite recovered from the change in direction. The engine layout, with horizontal cylinders and overhead camshafts, was designed for a low center of gravity, but it came at the cost of heat management and mechanical accessibility. The ignition system was notoriously unreliable. Moisture, vibration, and inconsistent wiring often led to hard starts or complete failures. Riders frequently needed assistance just to get it running. Even when it started, performance was erratic. Valve float, poor oiling, and internal vibration plagued the Porcupine from the start. Fragile magnesium components saved weight but cracked easily and reacted poorly to heat. The engine would run strong for a few laps, then falter. Mechanical failures during races were common, ranging from fuel delivery problems to catastrophic internal damage. Braking was basic for the time, drum brakes front and rear, while the suspension featured a girder front and plunger rear setup. Total weight came in around 380 pounds dry, and the seat height was set at 31 inches. But none of those details could make up for its central flaw. An engine that demanded constant attention and rarely gave anything back. Despite its World Championship win in 1949, the Porcupine's reputation was defined not by glory, but by failure. It may have claimed the podium once, but it spent far more time in the pits than on the track. These engines were disasters, but some brands are finally learning. If you're ready to see what's next, not just what failed, check out what's coming in 2026. And if you made it this far, like, comment, and subscribe. We've earned it.